Dr. Jazz. Dr. Jazz.
3 or 4 times, and always loved it. I saw you first time live way back in Ljubljana, if you remember, in the studios when you played
Oh,
on the TV show.
Ljubljana. You really with Branco.
Yeah,
right?
with Brana. Yeah.
Brana, right, Brana Ronchel.
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
Ronchel.
Good memory.
Yeah, it turned out to be a pretty good friend of mine. I remember those TV shows. He would do all the art. He would
Yeah.
do everything. He
Yeah.
would do the art, and yeah, those were wild. Yeah.
It was so cool, because there was always a talk, and you guys then played 2 sets. It was so much fun always. So.
So a beautiful city. I
Yeah.
remember very clearly he took us to this wonderful dinner at this one of those, outdoor restaurants
Oh yeah.
that have like the tables like literally almost built into the trees. And we had this beautiful fish
Mm.
that was like cooked like under salt. It
Oh yeah.
came out.
Yeah.
I still remember that. I
It's
remember
nice,
the
right?
meals. I
Yeah.
remember the meals more than the gigs.
Me too. Always when I check, the tours or the gigs you do, I'm like, oh, where do we play? Oh yeah, that's where we had, I don't know, that amazing pasta or something.
Exactly. That's
You don't remember.
Get your priorities straight.
Always good hotel and good food, and then hopefully there'll be a good gig. So yeah. But yeah, I mean, speaking of gigs, I just wanted to ask you first. Start this our talk. I want to go through some of the stuff you did. I have you on so many records, and
Uh-huh.
and I just first wanted to ask you, like during this lockdown, I saw you did some stuff also with Jamie, Saft, and Steve, like this kind of shows during this period. And I wanted to ask you, because you've been so active with Jamie, I know you play together with Latin for Travelers, but when did you first start playing with Jamie? Like, when does your story go? And with Steve, actually, with these two guys.
Well, I hired Jamie for my Weather Clear Track Fast band
Yeah.
when he first came to New York.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He was just young. He was just out of college. I think out of NEC. I think it was NEC he went, New England Conservatory. And I heard him play it. I was like, okay, you want to play in my band? And he was like, sure. Yeah. But he was just young. I don't think he had ever gone to Europe and played, no beard,
Wow.
thin as a rail, really thin, like young guy with no beard, really thin, but hell of a player, and then of course he got everyone else to the, he had Kung and Andrew D'Angelo and Hasselbring, they brought in everyone they knew to the band, and we went to Europe 2 or 3 times, made 2 records, and that was great, but they were all first time. A lot of them were first time
In Europe. Yeah.
And then after that, I put together my Latin for Travelers band with Ducre and Jerome Harris, and I asked him to play organ.
Yeah.
And that just started a long, now of course it's gone beyond. I'm the band leader and he's my sideman. Now we're peers and we're collaborators, and I think that mostly started with he helped me mix and played a little bit on my record Coalition of the Willing from 2007, and then after that we did Doom Jazz, which by the way is getting reissued.
Oh, really? Wow.
This is our big news, Jamie and I. Subsound Records from Italy is this spring, early summer, is reissuing Doom Jazz on vinyl.
Oh, wow.
Which is really exciting.
That's good news, yeah.
And not only that, we've got in the can 3 other Doom Jazzes. So they're going to have committed to 4 Doom Jazz cycles.
Wow, that's
Doom
beautiful.
Jazz 1, 2, 3, 4, all on vinyl, which is really great. and they're a very cool label. So I'm very excited about that. But so then we did Doom Jazz, and Jamie got his studio in Brooklyn, and we started to do a lot of recordings together. We would do recordings as Swami Late played.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
we did like Cantos 1 and 2, and we would just get together in the studio and just do wild stuff as a duo.
Yeah.
Doom Jazz kind of just was one of those concepts, that we did. And now, then, Jamie had this idea to put together a trio, more of a swing or jazz or whatever you want to call it. And he asked me if I would talk to Steve, because, I had been playing with Steve. I met Steve and Carla at the Detroit Jazz Festival in, I don't know, 1990, maybe it was like 1998 or something. And I was on stage. I think I played right after them or right before, something like that. And we met, how you do when you. And I said to Carla, "Oh, hey, hi, and she said, "A big fan," I said to her, of course. And she said, "Oh, me and Steve, we hate you."
So yeah, sound like those guys, right?
Right? I was like, "Okay." And she said, "Yeah, your music's too good. We hate you."
That's a nice compliment.
Yeah, I said, "Well, coming from Carla, I mean, that's like, right. Do you think my music is good?" Like, okay. So, and then Steve came over, and anyway, the upshot was, like I said, how like people say, "Oh yeah, we'll get together, we'll play sometime." Yeah, right. And, but Steve said, I said, "I'm gonna call you. If I call you, will you come and play bass?" And I was like kind of kidding, and he said, "Yeah." I said, "Will you really?" He said, "Yeah." So I thought, okay. So I kind of got back together a group that I had, when I first came to New York, I was doing that instrumentation.
Yeah.
Two horns, piano, bass, drums. And then I had kind of moved on. I did a record called Claus Late Morning, when I used Frizzell, accordion, and pedal steel. But that record kind of broke me out of my two-horn piano, bass, drums orchestration. And then I went into my electric period, blah, blah. We'll probably get to that. Anyway, I decided to bring that back, that orchestration, and only with Marty and with Ray Anderson. And I asked Steve to play, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
And we did, Bump
Yeah.
the Renaissance.
Oh,
yeah. And that's where we were in Ljubljana, and right, that's where you heard us probably. In that band. So Steve knew. Jamie knew that I, of course, knew Steve and had played with Steve, and he asked me, "Do you think that you could ask Steve if he would play with me, with the trio?" I said, "Sure, of course." So I did, and then we did a bunch of records for Rare Noise.
Yeah.
So we did a couple gigs this summer, I think.
Such a cool band. And the like that Dark Squares, I love that one. And the Cloak, it's like all those, like the swinging one.
Oh yeah.
So cool. Also,
did you hear the one with Iggy Pop?
Know about it, but I heard some, but haven't like dug into it yet. So I have to check it out.
The ones with Iggy,
I know you did
That's a double record, but Iggy only did 3 tunes, but he sounds great, of course. Yeah. But,
how did you get that together with Iggy?
Jamie got that all together.
Okay. Wow, funny.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was like, "Yeah, we're gonna get Iggy Pop." I was like, "Okay, all right, I'll be. Let me know. I'll be standing by." Yeah. So he got that all together. So anyway, that's how all that happened.
Yeah.
So Jamie and I and Steve, played a couple gigs during the pandemic, outdoors.
Yeah.
Of course.
How is it like for you? I've talked to Adam Nussbaum, and he plays with Steve a lot, and every drummer like talks such good stuff about Steve, you know, and I wanted to hear your view as a drummer playing with Steve, you know, because he's just there, so important, and also
Just there. That's a good way to put it. He's just there. You know, he's always there. He's not somewhere else. You know, he's that's exactly the thing with Steve. He's present.
Yeah.
He's always present. And, you know, I'm going to say this about Steve. I'm going to say what I appreciate might be a little odd as a drummer, but his his tone, of course, is so present and big that it's a very nice solid foundation. You know, you never feel like it can be blown away by the next breeze. It's very much there. And also, but the way Steve approaches pitch, you know, his pitch is so centered. It's so solid that, you know, it's so in tune and so solid, his pitch, that it's really, you know, even, you know, as a drummer who you quote don't have anything to do with pitch, which is bullshit, of course.
Sure.
But, you know, it's so magical listening to his beautiful centering of pitch.
Yeah.
So like the way he centers pitch on the bass is like everything else then becomes just much easier to center.
Yeah.
So which allows everyone to, you know, and I remember sometimes in Bump, it was a little, not the pitch thing, but the fact that Steve is very happy to play an ostinato. Now, an ostinato, people don't know, is like a repeated pattern. So sometimes in my music, I would have an ostinato. But because it was Steve, I was very like, oh, I don't want to give Steve Swallow an ostinato because he's like the master of chord. You know, you give him chords, and the way he navigates through the chord changes, like he's a master of that, of course, right? So sometimes I didn't, you know, a lot of times I don't write in chord changes, which is why I asked him in the first place, would you play with me? So I would give him an ostinato, but I was very clear. I would say, look, here's the ostinato, but, you know, you can play off the ostinato and don't feel restricted by the ostinato. But a lot of times Steve would just play the ostinato, and sometimes almost I would say like, Steve, no, you know, it was always too much. Like, don't play the ostinato all the time. I was like surprised, but I really like playing the ostinato.
Yeah.
So Steve is like funny, like where I thought like he would revolt against playing a pattern over and over. Nothing pleases him more. You know, then which is something I discovered about him. He loves to just play. And then he would tell me stories about how he used to play with Jack Jones, the singer. And, you know, how he loved to play with Jack Jones. It's like, if anybody knows Jack Jones, like he's like a kind of a lounge singer.
Yeah.
To Steve, this was like, he loved that. Steve really likes, and so I discovered a lot of things about Steve, you know, and I would like, of course, like when we got to know each other and we would tour together, you know, that you would, when you tour with people after you get to know them, you really like to mess with them, you know. And like I realized like Steve really wanted to have a set list.
Oh, okay.
I discovered that Steve likes a set list. He wants to put the set list in order. If you change the set list, that's okay, because in the later days of Bump, I would do all kinds of stuff. Like I would always, like we would playing and I would be, you know, I would make a set list, but invariably we would never play the set list. Almost never. Because in the heat of the moment, I would think, well, I don't want to play this other tune next. And so I would pull out the next tune while I was playing and I would just show it to, you know, to Steve, you know, was next to me, and then he'd have to show it to Wayne, and like, you know, and like everybody would forget, okay, you know, like, and then we would go to that tune. And then as we progressed as a band, even more, I would do things like pull out another tune. We would play part of that tune, and then I would pull out the tune that we had been playing.
Oh
We
wow,
would go
yeah,
back to that tune because I was really like playing the head of this tune, the B
beautiful.
section of another tune, whatever, free, then back to this. And I would love to do this stuff with them. So my music was all over the floor and all in different. And after a while, I didn't even know what the set list was
Yeah,
because my music was so out of order. Nevertheless, if I didn't make a set list, Steve would really, I just couldn't go into the gig like without one. And
yeah,
we would get dinner because that's another thing with Steve. He required dinner before the set. He would always look at me and we'd go, Bobby, did you make a set list? And I said, and I would, after a while, I would just like, no, I didn't really make one yet. When are you going to make one? When are you going to make one? I was like, well, I don't know. Like, I'll make one, like, well, so I would like really mess with him. And he, of course, knew I was messing with him after a while, so he would do it. He would do that to get me to, there was all this deepening levels of, but finally I'd love to like give him the set list like 2 seconds before we got on stage.
Man, that's
Yeah,
so cool.
but he's, suffice to say, all the musical things aside,
Yeah,
Steve is, I think, probably the most consummate professional I've ever played with in my
mm,
life. I mean, he is a professional from the top of his head to the tips of his loafers, He is a pro
yeah,
in terms of showing up, knowing
punctuality.
the
Yeah,
music, prepared, his sound, never having, bringing things because he needed his sound, everything, never complaining, never asking about this or that, or rehearsals too long, or if
yeah.
anything, Steve would go, no,
Wow.
let's keep playing. We need to get this to. Steve is the most incredible person to be on the road with I've ever been with in those terms.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
and
so
he's
important.
Steve, isn't it amazing? And he's Steve Swallow. He could have pulled rank, as we
Yeah,
say,
yeah, sure.
a million times on tour, and he never did.
Yeah.
It's kind of incredible. Yeah,
That's why he's been doing that since the late 50s, basically, on such a level. I mean,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly. It's
yeah,
always, then you learn as you become more and more musician, you learn it's always people like that. Those are the people that,
yeah,
of course, they're badasses. They're real badasses. They don't have to say they're
yeah,
badasses. They show you,
yeah,
all the time. It's really a lesson, quite a lesson.
yeah. I had the same experience with Paul McCandless. You
Uh-huh.
know, it he's a little bit younger than Steve, but he was, I invited him to a trio, and we did then several tours and records, and he was always like that. I don't know, 40 years older than me, and he could have been like, okay, wait a second, who I
Right.
am. And he was always, we sometimes had to drive 8 hours in a van, and it was just like, yeah, well, we have to drive 8 hours
That's
in a van,
right.
and still keeping the humor and everything. It's like amazing, really.
That's the deal, right?
Yeah,
Because that's just what it is.
yeah,
If you can't do that, you should
yeah,
get another job.
yeah. Probably true. But yeah, but if I return just to the trio with Jamie, I also wanted to ask you about how did the trio with Nels came about? You and Jamie. I mean, you've done so much, and I really love that music from the early 21st century record, which is improvised completely, right? Which I find amazing. And I wanted to ask you something about that. But first, like, how did you hook up with Nels? First of all,
Oh, I knew Nels from way back in the day.
like the
Um,
80s already, or
yeah, way
wow,
back when he's lived in Los Angeles before, when he was a cult figure, and he was always, he was like the rest of us, couldn't get any gigs,
yeah,
like, um, and but I never really played with him much. And so then he moved to New York, and then Nels plays on my Rhapsody record, which we should get to.
yeah,
Um, But I'm not sure. I can't remember. I think I'm not sure if it was my idea or Jamie's idea, but certainly I called Nels like I called Steve because
Steve, yeah.
Jamie didn't know Nels. And I said, I just think this will be. No, I remember what happened now. That's not correct. This is what happened. Now I called Nels for my Rhapsody band, which was with Jen Shu, um, uh, Zena Parkins, Greg Osby, and it was quite a written and improvised. Part of it I conduct.
Yeah.
It was like it was a song. It's a song cycle. Jen sings beautifully.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And we had a tour, and our last gig was in Buffalo, and there's this really cool club in the middle of Pennsylvania, which is kind of halfway between Buffalo and back to New York. And Jen and Zena had gigs, and they had to fly out. So I booked this gig for me and Medeski and Nels to play as a trio, because I thought that'll be great, right?
Yeah.
But John's mother died or father died. He had a death in the family, and he couldn't make it. And I had to get Jamie at the last minute, because this music is really hard, right?
Yeah.
This is the kind of music you can't just like call anybody. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? It was like not very long before the gigs. And I was like, who in the world can I call that will crush this gig?
Yeah.
That will really like can read, just understands. Because I had called Jamie years before for a John Adams project. The composer John Adams.
Yeah.
I music directed one of his operas, and I as a contractor for the band, and I got Jamie to play. That was really hard. That was way harder than Rhapsody. That was the hardest thing I've ever seen in my life. That's a whole other story.
Yeah.
Like, that was crazy. That was just like, if you lost your place in this 2-hour opera, there was no way you could ever
gone. Yeah.
It was just sort of like maddening how difficult it was. And but nevertheless, so I thought, oh, I got to call Jamie, because, and like, I don't know whether he'll even be free, but
Sure.
so
Like,
he
yeah.
was, he took it serious. I said, Jamie, not only can you do this, will you do this? And he said, yeah, I'll do it. And he knew what I meant. Like, will you like study the music and,
Yeah.
and he did, and he came in and killed it. But part of it, of course, was this other gig.
Yeah.
So he came with us to play the large ensemble, and then played the trio gig with Nels. And we recorded it. And then, since we recorded it, that became the band. And that's how that started. But yeah, it was always supposed to be completely improvised, because I love that.
But how do you approach this? I wanted to, I mean, you and Jamie are so tight when you play together, and Nels, he's a maestro of effects and everything, and he just finds all this space between you guys, which I find amazing. I mean, also his trio and, the stuff he has. And
Right.
But how do you approach a free improv? Like, how did you guys do it? Or even in your case, I've spoken to Tom Rainey, let's say, and I've played with Tom, and, he can stick playing just the snare for 2 minutes, and that's it. And then develop it. But like in your case, how do you approach a complete free improv gig? Like, what's the angle? It differs, I guess, of course, but.
Right. Well, I think the first thing is, who's on the improv gig?
Yeah.
That's obviously the first question. Who and what instruments do they play?
Yeah.
So to be aware of the instrumentation and orchestration and who's doing it, that's the first thing. I think, approaching it, I kind of teach this in my, I have a free improvisation 4-day workshop that I do every year. It's coming up in June, actually. And it's all about, to me, it's all about, of course, it's about being in the moment
Sure.
and all those things that everybody says, and ability to move. But it's also, you have to have a mind towards what makes sense following and preceding what.
Mm,
You
yeah.
can't just go from one event to the other, because that's just like one event to the next. To me, that's not interesting.
Yeah.
I want to hear what this section, what that has to do with this section,
The
and
story.
what that has to do with the section that hasn't been played yet. I
Yeah.
want to know whatever we're into. I want to feel, the raison d'etre of it all, and
Yeah.
the and the possible entrance points and exit points of it, because there's always possible exit points and entrance points.
Yeah.
It's like about they did a study about how fire fighters think, and the way firefighters think is very interesting. The way they're trained, they're if you're fighting a fire, if you go into a burning building, you can't make you can't find the absolute best decision.
Yeah. Sure.
By the time you do that, you're dead, right? So what you do is you quickly scan the landscape,
With jazz. Yeah.
right? And you make the best decision you can make then.
Yeah.
So, but it only involves going, but here's the thing. You move to the next point, and then you do the same thing.
Yeah.
You scan the landscape and you make another decision. Is it the best decision? Maybe not. Is it the worst decision? Probably not. But it's a decision.
Decision. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good one.
So I often think that really great improvisers think like this. They're not waiting around for this is the best thing I could have done then. It's like, but you're thinking, but you're scanning all the time, and you're making all these decisions about where to go. I could go there.
Yeah.
We could go, or what the music is letting you or dragging you towards. Sometimes the music drags you a certain direction, or lets you go in a certain direction, or tells you no, or tells you yes, maybe, all these things. And many times, there's such a thing as you could be trying too hard to
Yeah.
improvise,
Yeah.
and trying
Yeah.
too hard to make a decision,
Yeah.
and trying desperately to play music. And sometimes I say to my students, stop trying to play music.
Yeah. That's a good
You're
one.
trying
Yeah.
too hard to play music. So there's that too, right? It's an incredible process trying to play free.
What about
It,
fear?
what?
What about fear in playing free? Like what
That's a
you
huge thing.
can do or not do. I mean, that's
Fear is a huge, huge arrestor of music. If
yeah.
you're afraid, you can't do anything.
Yeah.
When I do sometimes every once in a while I do my Bitches Brew band, which I used to do a lot. Now I just sort of do it as a teaching tool.
Hmm.
That's all I'm sort of teaching is play without fear.
Yeah.
You can't be afraid, or you can't do anything,
Yeah.
And band leaders that make their musicians afraid, that's no good.
Yeah.
Like the first thing I do is try to, and that's not to say I always put everybody in a comfortable position. I like to put people in slightly uncomfortable positions in their music,
Musically,
so that they can,
sure.
they can go to new places. But I don't like to make people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I I want them to feel, empowered and not afraid, certainly not afraid of me. What's there to be afraid of? I don't want them,
Sure.
that's crazy.
Yeah.
So, fear is really a huge, thing. And, you know, um, listening, the last thing I'll say is, you have to, the way to approach also free improvisation or any improvisation or
Hmm.
any music actually is, let's say I'm playing a duo with you. You're playing guitar, maybe, right? What are
Yeah.
you playing?
Guitar. Yeah, sure.
Okay. So you're playing guitar and I'm playing drums, right? I don't think of it, I won't think of it that way. The way I'll think of it is that I'm playing also the guitar.
Hmm. Okay.
So everything that you play, I own, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you play something and I think, man, I played a beautiful passage there. That was a great thing that I just did. Even if I'm laying out, I'm not
Yeah.
playing at
Yeah.
all. And you're playing, I'm creating what you're playing. This is the attitude
The
that
perspective.
I
Yeah.
like to have. I own all the music, and everyone else owns all the music, so that the music isn't coming from you towards me and from me towards you in a line. The music doesn't exist.
Yeah.
The music exists somewhere else, in some kind of middle ground, middle
Yeah.
earth that neither of us own, and both of us own completely.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is I
Know
think
what you mean.
the thing, because when you start to think and feel like that, then you no longer feel when music is going by anything super personal. Like you don't feel like, what should I do next? How
Yeah.
was that thing I just did?
Yeah.
Um,
See, that's many times a problem. Like sometimes I face these situations and I'm like, fuck, I played again this stuff. Or, I had like a free improv gig a while ago and the musicians we kind of didn't gel together. It was like various, a
right,
DJ, blah, blah. And,
right,
I tried so hard. I listened to the singer, the drummer, but it was okay, but it was not over there. And then, I realized after 20 minutes, I played something. I was like, wait, I'm going into the bag of tricks or something that I always do. And I was like, fuck, I'm sick of hearing that playing. And,
right.
how do you deal with those situations? That's like, man,
You have to really go into, well, first of all, it's really hard. I don't like to improvise with people I don't trust,
yeah,
which is
yeah,
to say, but sometimes you're improvising with someone you don't know. What are you going to do?
yeah,
Okay, you're not going to maybe say no all the time. So okay, so here's a person I don't know anything about. Um, but then I have to go into it even more. I have to go into that
yeah,
space that um I'm playing that so that I'm not always thinking about what I can contribute,
yeah, yeah.
contribute. I'm already contributing. If I don't play a note, I'm just
You're there. Yeah,
standing there. I'm
yeah,
still there and I'm still contributing. And I can change the music if if you don't if you're not hearing the music, or if you're thinking it's not gelling or whatever, there are many things that grow out of this attitude, like, because everything is possible,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But it isn't in free music. It's funny, like only some things you're supposed to play and some things you're not, right?
True. That's
Right?
true.
Right?
True.
But if it's really free, everything is possible,
Yeah,
right? So you should be able to go up to your amplifier, turn it up to 11, and just bury everyone for 5 minutes, right? Why is that not a compositional choice?
Sure.
That's a composition. Where is it written that, everybody has to be heard equally all the time? And if someone
Yeah.
plays quietly, then you have to play quietly because because I'm such a sensitive musician and you're playing quietly? Oh, I'll play quietly too because I'm sensitive.
Yeah.
Now you're playing loud, and I'm going to play what you're playing because I'm sensitive. Like, go listen to Ravel. Go
Yeah.
listen to
Yeah.
somebody
Sure.
who's an orchestrator, right? Instruments come out, instruments recede. There are things
Yeah.
that cross that somehow make no sense. This is music,
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, if you aren't liking what's going on, this is how I choose my musicians. I like musicians to be able to subvert my own music.
Mm.
I might want to strangle them on stage the moment they're doing it. If I don't like I don't like what they're doing, I might want to walk over to you, Sam, and go, just strangle you. Like, stop, right? But I want them to feel like they can do it.
That's right. Yeah.
Because only then are you going to get anything real. You never get anything real if everybody's always looking at you like,
Yeah.
is this
Well, you have a
okay?
lounge gig then, or whatever, yeah, or something.
Right. Or that, you're trying to all fit in together. It's like you really have to feel like the music is in the middle. And if the DJ plays for 5 minutes his stuff without you doing anything, or maybe you do one skronk chord in 5 minutes,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's music too.
It's okay still. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe you're going to listen to it later and think, oh, that sucked. But then it goes into another thing, the whole idea about judgment and
Yeah.
whose judgment is valid and is any judgment valid and how do we judge and what part of our conscious brain and our consciousness we're using to judge, and we all have our our things and we're using those things to judge, and it's just like,
Yeah. Then
who
it's
can tell?
yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Did you like get this way of thinking already when you started with, like, let's say, improvised music, or like we're talking about, I don't know, because I read somewhere that you went to the University of Buffalo where Cage and Feldman were also there. So those
Right.
guys are like, they
Right.
basically did amazing changes. But like did you already in the beginning like start thinking like that?
No, I mean, I'm old.
Come on.
But I've been playing music for a long
A long
time,
time, yeah.
and little by little these things dawn on you. Like, oh, okay,
You can do
maybe
that.
right, maybe that's the way to approach it. Um, I mean, those people were brilliant. They weren't improvisers, but
No,
they
yeah.
had a lot to say about music, of course. Um, and it was being around them and being around Julius Eastman and all those
Yeah.
people, Xenakis, and I mean, that was quite an education
Yeah.
for me, being just some kid who was a rock funk musician.
Yeah.
All of a sudden,
Yeah.
what? What? You can put music together like this? But so obviously it became part of my education.
Yeah.
You know. But I would say that it's all a jumble. That coming to New York and playing in the downtown scene,
Yeah.
reading about Stockhausen, watching his lectures, everything, listening to Miles. It's all, and
Yeah.
eventually, the more you do it, the more, like anything else, the more, for better or for worse, um, the more you sort of focus in on things that you feel um, uh, uh, enhance
Yeah.
or make your worldview,
Yeah.
which is what we're
Yeah.
all doing, right?
Yeah. No, I love this, fearlessness that you have in your music as a player and as a composer or band leader, because you're just sometimes like you said, you go taka taka taka, or you just don't,
Right.
that's why I love this. But you mentioned, Bobby, New York and the downtown scene, and I wanted to ask you, like, I've spoken to so many guys. I did, with Elias and all these guys you play still with, and like, how was it like for you when you moved to New York in 1997, and like the early 80s in this, especially the improvised scene, like Tim Byrne and all these guys slowly, you guys pushing up, like, how was it for you, the start?
Great. I mean, there's no other. It was one of the most exciting periods
Hmm.
of my life, and I would probably say a lot of people would probably say similar things. I mean,
Yeah.
there were many places to play. Everybody was taking chances. The scene was much less compartmentalized.
Yeah,
We
makes
had
sense.
friends who were in stone pop bands, who were friends of ours, who would incorporate elements of what we did, surf bands,
Mm.
Punk bands. It was all just sort of like,
Yeah.
and it was very exciting time, and to be there in New York at that time, it was the place that I should have been, and I was lucky enough to be there,
Yeah.
just taking it all in, and like everybody, everybody's empowering everyone else, right? You go and see someone do something, and you go, oh, that can be done.
Yeah.
I could do that too, and I can maybe push that even farther. And then this person sees you do that and goes, oh,
Yeah.
So we're all feeding off each other in a really beautiful way. And then, like anything else, things get codified, and some people, the society picks out certain people,
Yeah.
and like, that starts to be, to just starts to be what it is. It's just a thing that happens. And some people go their separate ways more, and people get older and they physically move out, which means you don't get to.
Yeah.
Wayne Horvitz, my good friend, moved to Seattle. That was a big.
Oh yeah.
It was
Exactly.
a blow for me. It was great, but then we were separated. So things like that happened. But that was one of the great periods for me, for sure.
What
It
were like
was really exciting.
the first jazz connections you made? Like, when you came to New York, did you like know some people already? Like, or how did you start making, the talking about improvised and jazz gigs, let's say?
The only person I knew, well, the only person I knew, because there's millions of people in New York, but the only person I really knew was Elliot Sharp.
Really? Wow, really? I didn't know.
Yeah,
Wow.
because he lived in Buffalo.
Oh,
And I
wow.
actually went to school. He went to school where I did, only he was kicked out for political activity.
Okay.
But his teacher was Feldman.
Oh, wow.
And I knew him. I think I had electronic music class with him. That's back in the day when the electronic music class was like, patch
Yeah.
cord
Yeah.
tape.
Yeah.
You would spend 20 minutes patching things to be able to go like, "Huh?" Literally. You
Yeah.
would have to record, "Huh?" and then 20 more minutes to go.
That's so
But
bizarre.
yeah, isn't it? And
Yes.
I mean, it was crazy. But Elliot was in that class with me, and then so I knew him, and I played in his senior recital. But then then he got disgusted, and he moved to New York. So he moved to New York just before me. So he fell in
Okay.
with the downtown scene. So you know what that's like. If you go and you know a person, you automatically kind of go into their scene, right? So he knew all these people. So I went and I stayed with him and he knew all these people, and I just went into the scene, and
Yeah.
and weirdly, there weren't there didn't seem to be too many drummers in that scene. I'll just say, especially drummers who were interested and who could kind of swing,
Yeah.
which I
Oh, you
seems
do.
people think I can do.
Oh, I think you do, man. Like
Uh,
auto the auto. That's like the perfect,
I don't.
man. That's like the best swing ever. Seriously.
Well, you're really taking me back now. But yeah, so I kind of got a lot of work.
Yeah.
I started to get a lot of calls, and that's what happens, and just things went from there.
When was the first time you went to Europe then? Like in the 80s, like as a touring musician?
In the 80s. Yeah,
was
the
it
first
with?
time it was with a guitar player named David Rosenbloom, not David Rosenbloom, the electronic music, David Rosenbloom, who had this rock, you wouldn't know him, but David Hofstra, the bass player, got me the gig.
Okay.
And then after that, I started to go to Europe a lot with Tom Varner.
Oh yeah, I love Tom. Yeah, man, I love Tom. Yeah,
and Tom's great. And I was in his band for years. Then I went with Zorn, of course, and then I went with Wayne and the President.
Yeah.
And Butch and I and Wayne started to go a lot.
Oh wow.
Oh, we had a trio. Do you know those records?
No.
Oh,
seriously? Oh man, I have to check this out. I mean, I have
you have to hear a record called 9 Below Zero.
Okay.
Because me and Wayne and Butch had a trio. This is one of my favorite bands I was ever in my life. It wasn't my band. It was basically Wayne's band, but it was more of a collaborative band.
Wow.
And Butch was, we could go on and on about Butch.
Yeah, sure.
But I went there with that trio, and then I did a tour with Billy Bang, and then
really?
I started to get my own, that's also how that happens. You go to Europe enough, you meet.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you that, like your choice.
That's how it happens. You
to become a band leader and
you meet the producer. Well, I'd always been a band leader.
Yeah.
But when I came to New York, I did one smart thing. Maybe I said to myself, you know what? I don't know anybody here. I'm not even gonna think about doing my own music for a while. I'm gonna keep writing, but I'm not gonna think about trying to get a band together. I want to establish myself as a musician first, and just kind of get to know people, so I could have a band.
Yeah, makes sense.
Right? Yeah. And that's what I did. So so that's why I toured Europe a lot before as a sideman, and I met all the promoters, right? And then I said, okay, well, I have this music, and then luckily I got one break. Pedro de Freitas with Sound Aspect Records wanted to do a record with me. So that was my record, Bump the Renaissance.
Bump the Renaissance, yeah. That was like 87.
So, with Lenny Pickett from Tower Power.
Yeah.
And from then on, it was just, I just, that record led to my my contract with Gramavision.
Yeah, which was quite important.
Then from there on, then people knew me, and I got reviewed, and then everyone knew me. I knew all the promoters, and that was just it.
Easier, yeah. Like
it's a lot easier.
How was Europe we're talking about, let's say, mid 80s, like early 80s?
Well, for an American, it was great,
Like jazz tours in Europe back then, like with 100 currencies and.
Yeah. Oh, well, that was always. I remember so well waking up early after getting to bed late, because those days gigs were later. Now you're in your hotel by 11:30. It's dark.
True.
But getting 3 hours of sleep, waking up before the band because you had a 10:30 or luckily it was a 10 o'clock train,
Yeah.
but you had a bunch of lira and you were going to Germany and you weren't coming back to Italy. And you had to get the lira changed to dollars in Italy because you cannot go and change them in Germany because you will get killed.
Yeah.
Because the lira will be changed into, right? Deutschmarks first, then dollars, you lose all this money, right? So I remember so well many times, wake up early, grab all my lira,
6 million, worth of $20.
Right. Go around to the, go into the banks at 9 o'clock in the morning in Italy, get the best rate. Okay, how much is the rate? Okay, thank you. I'll be right back. Going to another bank. How much is the rate? Is there a commission? You'd always have to ask, is there a commission? Doing all the math in my head, then going back to the original bank or figuring out, getting it changed with the 20 billion pieces of paperwork then in Italy that you had to do just to change money. Then, stack of American money, going back, paying the band. It was crazy. So when the euro came,
that made
it was a lot easier. For us. Those were fond but not fond memories.
But you mentioned Bum the Renaissance. I love that record. It's so good. Like the tunes, you wrote such amazing tunes, like the rhythmic patterns, and I love all the stuff you did. You always seem to write for the band. I mean, always I get this idea with you, even with the Curator and Jerome. But I wanted to ask you, like, becoming like a band leader in Europe, taking your own band, was there and still is like some sort of pressure of you as being a band leader, or no? Like, how do you deal with these situations?
What kind of pressure?
Well, musically, partly dealing with people, with musicians, and taking care of this other aspect, which is kind of like sitting always there, and promoters and journalists, and when's the dinner, and when's the hotel, and when's the train, and you're like a father.
Yeah. Well, okay. I mean, it's a lot of work, and you really have to be. Some people can't do it.
Yeah.
Can't separate. You really have to be able to compartmentalize. Like you have to be like, all that stuff. Like when's the dinner? Get the ride together for tomorrow? Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
All this stuff, and then you have to play music.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So you have to sort of forget all those things and lead your band. Right. Really not the easiest thing to do. I don't know why. Like I did a couple tours with Tim Byrne. Tim Byrne was very good. Is a very good band leader, and I learned some things from Tim. You just always have to stay one step ahead and on top of it, and you take care of the things that you need to do. You can't procrastinate. Take care of the things you can take care of, so that when you are just thinking about music, then you're just thinking about music.
Important.
And after the gig, certain rules, like, I don't want to talk about this right before the gig. Okay, you want an interview? Okay, that has to be at this time. I can't do that. You have to set some boundaries. Otherwise, you can't do anything. And you have to, I found, which I didn't always do when I was younger, but I learned, you rely on your band, you treat them with respect that they deserve, and they give you it back, and they watch and they help and they watch your back.
It's like a basketball team or something.
Right, and you're honest with them, and you treat them well. If you do those things, then it's a lot easier. Because you've got, a crew, and because listen, stuff's going to happen. We could do a whole podcast, a hilarious podcast for 10 hours on all the stuff that happens to you when you're a band leader. Being in the middle of the Eastern Bloc with Jamie, my young band, they were like amazed because we went to the train station. We had a day where we had 3 trains. We were going all the way across Europe, and we were deep in Eastern Europe in a little town. What was it like? It might have
Poland
been
or Romania.
Kiel or something. Yeah, it was real, right? And we went to the train station. We walked in, and I looked up at the board, and our train was canceled.
Oh man.
First train was canceled. And I just went, okay, everybody, turn around, out. They were like, what? Out the door. Went out the door, and I just looked at all the taxis, saw the biggest one, went over to him and said, I need to get to Leipzig, because it was like it was a putt-putt, right, from somewhere to Leipzig where you could get a train. But I knew that there would be no trains. I wasn't even going to waste time like going to the desk and trying to get
smart, sure.
I
Nothing would be done.
knew,
Yeah.
right, there was no way I was going to get to the gig in 8 hours, right? Unless I did this thing. So I went outside and I said, how much do you want to get us to Leipzig? I got to get there in an hour and a half. What do you want? I gave them the money. Everybody piled in the van, and, and we made the gig. And they were all like, whoa,
Yeah.
And they were like, because they would call me, it was a weird thing to call someone, but, my nickname was Duce, because.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Because like, I'm very, with my musicians, I treat them well, but if somebody's going to mess around with us,
sure.
I'm very like, no.
But that's important, yeah.
Yeah, we're not doing this. We're doing this, and we have to go to dinner now. And I'm very aware of.
That's important, yeah.
Yeah, you have to take care. You're responsible for these people.
Yeah.
And I think it's not just like all fun and games. You're responsible for them. And so anyway, there's thousands of stories like that. But you certainly have to keep your wits about you. But if you treat your band with respect, they take care of you.
Yeah, they have your back. This was this band you talked about. I mean, I love what you're doing on Bandcamp. I mean, all the fans and music fans should check out your Bandcamp, definitely, because this is this Somewhere in Italy band we're talking about now, right?
Right, Somewhere in Italy, yeah.
I love that. And but you've been publishing so many amazing, live gigs and stuff. And
yeah, that's my new thing. I've been doing that a lot on Bandcamp, but I'm now going to, I would make everyone aware that I have a Patreon page, and on my Patreon page, I am, well, first off, I'm uploading tons of video of me discussing, breaking down my favorite soundtracks, analyzing music, telling stories like that one, my favorite stories on the road and from my life and music. And so there's a lot of video on my Patreon page, and now I'm getting more and more audio on it. And all of those things that are on Bandcamp, I'm going to be offering on my Patreon page, for free, not free, but you have to become a patron. But they will be available to all my patrons.
Yeah, we have to
all my music eventually.
You have to send me a link, Bobby, to later so that we add this.
Okay, great.
Definitely. Great. Yeah, I mean, but speaking of you being a band leader, I think we could talk like for 6 hours about so many projects you've done, because I don't know where you buy time to do all this stuff. But I just wanted to ask you, like, how do you choose bands? How do you decide which direction? I love Latin for Travelers. I love Empty Suits, with Jerome and Robin. And, I want to touch a little bit the Charlie Hunter story later. But how do you decide which direction and who to play with? Like, how does this process go in your head?
It really, it's like a dream, Many times I sort of dream or daydream a sound, like a composite sound. Like I don't think, oh, I'm gonna put a band together like this now, or I really need to put this kind of band together. Many times I'm just, I mean, that really happened with Claude's Like Morning, for instance. I had this just this sound going around in my head, and I had to figure out what it was. Like,
Mm.
what is that? Oh, that's an accordion. Okay, so I need an accordion. All right, what is that? Oh, that's a pedal steel guitar. So many times that's kind of what happens to me. Or, I go to see King Sunny Ade and I say, man, that's wow. Or I get inspired by something and I say, I'm hearing this. Like,
Yeah.
what is it? That's the first stage. And then um, usually it goes from there to who can I get to best represent the sound.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes it's more personal. Sometimes it's like, oh man, I really heard Charlie. I really like to do something with this person
Yeah.
because I really like their approach and their sound. And I think, as you saw, what I did with Charlie wasn't the normal thing
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
Charlie was doing. I played electronic drums.
I know it's crazy, man. That's really like
Yeah, right. Charlie was like, well, okay. So, but so many times I'll take an element, which is a person and what they do, and I'll decide to put them in like in the Rhapsody band. I had Nels
Yeah.
totally play acoustic guitar. And I had to call him and say, do you, I'm sure you probably play acoustic guitar, but would you play acoustic guitar? Would you be happy playing it? Would you?
That's
And he said, oh,
important.
I love playing acoustic guitar. Um, but of course, be, on electric guitar, you can write 5 minutes Nels Cline solo.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Sure.
And for 5 minutes, you've just got, or 10 minutes, you've got a great thing that you didn't have to do anything for,
That's true,
right?
actually. Yeah.
But if you've got somebody on acoustic guitar, it's much different. You've got to, how do I approach
Yeah.
it? You have to figure out, you play a note, that's it. Note dies. What's
Yeah.
next? You
Yeah.
either have to have another note or what, But so many times it's the musician, but then putting the musician in a context that people don't normally see them in. See,
Yeah.
I like
Yeah,
doing
that's what
that.
you said before. Yeah, like doing that, like pushing them into this
Yeah,
slightly less comfortable zone. Like, yeah.
right, right. Or someone that they may not have thought to do, or maybe they thought to do it but they never did it, or you know. Um, and most people who are explorers, who are in this line of work,
Yeah.
they're interested in doing that. They're interested in doing that. So I've had great luck with people being
Yeah. To try.
willing,
Yeah.
yeah, to try and to do these things.
Yeah. That's true. Like we mentioned Charlie. I really want to ask you about, I have had those records, the first ones when he did like Come As You Are. And, that's how I found out about him. Like, the more this funky, well, jazzy stuff, whatever you want to call it. But like when I heard him, with your stuff, Coalition of the Willing and Ground Truther and all that, I'm like, no, what? It's like what you said. But I wanted to ask you, how did you guys hook up? Did you know from before, or did you just call him for this project? Or
I I definitely called him. Somebody said Skerik
oh yeah,
said,
okay,
I think it was Skerik said, who you should play with? You should call Charlie Hunter. And so I just kind of did.
and you knew his music, or
Yeah, yeah, of
yeah,
course.
okay,
And we jammed and everything. But as I said, I wanted to do something a little different, and I
yeah,
proposed to him. There was a very interesting band called um, was it? I think it was called Skeleton Crew with Fred Frith and Tom Cora, who died. Rest in peace. There was some band, was it Sam Bennett? They had a duo with a rotating third person. This was back in the 80s. So I thought this is a really nice idea. So I proposed this to Charlie. I said, Charlie, since you can play, since as a duo we are sort of cover all those bases,
Yep.
I propose adding the element of electronics to it, one, and two, adding a third person, because we already they can just kind of plug right in,
Yeah.
because we have it all. The first record we did was just a duo on Rope-a-Dope. But then we started to do, when Ground Truther really started to happen, we did the trios. And we played with a lot of people, everybody from Randy Brecker to...
Really? I didn't know that.
Oh,
Wow,
yeah,
really? With Randy?
we had so many people,
Man.
odd collection of people come and play one night with us.
Wow,
And just
beautiful.
come at the Knitting Factory and play with us, because it didn't matter, because Charlie and I could do
Yeah.
our thing, and then they could just come in and be sauce. But Charlie, to his immense credit, was, way out of his sort of comfort zone. And he was so cool doing it. Not everybody would do that. It really speaks a lot about a person.
For him. Yeah.
Yeah, who would do something like that, and he was just very down to do it, and was really, which goes to show, you hear people doing a certain thing, and you just figured like that's their thing, and they're not interested in anything else. But that's not true.
True. Yeah.
Most of the time, it's not true. People are interested in a lot of things. They just don't get a chance, or no one calls them for other
Trying something else. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was incredibly fruitful. And then Charlie ended up being just one of my best friends. Just being a real friend, somebody who we don't have to play another note together, and we're, tight. I mean, I called Charlie up all the time just to talk.
Yeah.
And, so, yeah, Charlie's an amazing person. Yeah, he's really quite broad.
Yeah.
Which you wouldn't think when you hear his music. And he makes a point even to say, no, I'm just a guy that does this. I don't want, he even says it himself, but he's quite a broad person. He can talk on a range of subjects quite intelligently. So
yeah,
I enjoy touring with him.
Yeah, I love you guys. I love that one with Curtis also on trombone.
Oh yeah,
That's such a
Curtis.
Let the Bells Ring. I mean, on like such a nice record. You guys like swinging also, but you have so many also these live gigs of Ground Truther on Bandcamp.
Well, now we have
I love that.
8 of them from with DJ Logic.
Yeah,
put them all out because they were recorded well.
Yeah, like soundboard.
There were so many during the pandemic. I just got what everybody did. I got out all like this stuff I've had for years, and a lot of it I just threw away because mostly because I didn't like the recording.
Yeah,
because it was recorded poorly, and I was like, I'm not gonna ask people to pay hard-earned money for this crummy recording, even though the music might be good. So, but those were well recorded. Anything that I feel like I put out on my Bandcamp, if it's a live recording, it has to at least be something decent. Not somebody's little. It has to be a board. Something that was recorded for radio. Or like this. Makes sense, and then I'll say, okay, this I can mix and master, and it'll sound like something.
Yeah. Can I ask you if we're talking now about Bandcamp and all these Patreon and different platforms nowadays? If you compare the music industry, like let's say now and '87 when you did Bump the Renaissance, would you say it's that's a stupid question? Will be like easier or harder? But how would you compare? We all know what happened in between, but like as improvising or jazz musician and composer, For me, it seems like it's easier now because I live in these times as well. But like, how is your?
Wow, I'm happy to hear that because I think it's much harder.
Just to get the music to the people, it's easier, don't you think? Like,
Oh, sure, it's easier, but you can't survive
yeah,
doing it.
okay, yeah. Yeah, for me, it's
So
almost
great,
natural that you
great,
just get money from
great.
gigs. Yeah,
If you have a trust fund from your parents,
yeah,
it's
sure.
great.
Yeah,
You know,
that's what. Yeah,
if you've got a gold mine in your backyard or an oil well that you can, sure, wonderful. You can go online and have music available to everybody. But it's terrible if
Hmm.
you don't. It's
Yeah,
just terrible. It's 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 always gotten worse.
Hmm.
When CDs came, they were much cheaper to make. What happened? They became more expensive than
Yeah, true.
records. The profit margin of the record companies went up. This is why I say the record companies got everything they deserved. The profit margin went up, right? They were cheap to make.
Yeah,
After we started making our own CDs, we realized how cheap they were
yeah,
to
that's
make.
true. That's true.
I always hated CDs anyway. Always. I don't even own any CDs practically. I hate CDs. Always hated them. But that's aside. Like then after that came digital downloads,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah,
And then
that killed
now
it completely.
streaming.
Yeah.
Okay, but every step along this road has been less and less and less money for the creator.
Yeah. If you put, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Every step,
Yeah.
less money for the creator. Um, I read something where, somebody, some band sold 1,000 records. They made their own records, sold 1,000 records, and they made way more money than, Pharrell Williams made for, his breakout on Spotify.
Yeah.
All these places are incredibly evil.
Yeah. Yeah.
Spotify, Apple
It's
Music,
terrible. Yeah.
YouTube, they don't pay
Shit.
anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's terrible, and especially it's bad. That's why I'm happy to hear that because I feel so bad for the younger musicians. How in the world can they? It used to be my agent
Yeah.
took me when I wasn't very popular, you know, brought me through 2, 3, 4 tours of Europe that were
Yeah.
not a lot of money,
Solidly
took
paid.
less money
Yeah.
until I was built up.
Yeah.
Record company put out 5 records. First one maybe didn't do so well, second one did a little bit. They would invest in the artist. As messed up as the gatekeeper, right, thing is, and it
Yeah.
is messed up. Of
Yeah.
course, it's messed up.
Sure.
There's nothing that isn't messed up. The gatekeeper thing was messed up for other reasons, but at least somebody was there if they did choose you,
Yeah.
if they invested in you, and it wasn't like you made one record and right. Record companies would put out records that didn't make money because their pop division made money so
Yeah.
that they could put out Coltrane,
Yeah.
right? All
True.
this is gone. All this is gone, and it's really hard now because you can get your music out, but it's just the same as it used to be. But who's going to find your music?
Yeah. That's what I wanted to ask you. Like, that's what I was aiming to. That nowadays it's easier to get it out because it doesn't cost anything to put it, let's say. But how do you reach people? That's the problem. That's for me and for everyone, I guess. How do
You have to do all the work that record companies did.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah.
you have to become a crazy 24/7 internet personality.
Yeah.
That's what
Sure.
people do. You have to be on Twitter all the time, posting about all your reviews and I got this review and check out my thing
That's
and
terrible. Yeah.
it's yeah.
It
Of
is
course,
terrible. Yeah.
it's awful.
Mm.
I'm on Instagram. Get more people. That's what it is.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's 24/7 social media,
Yeah.
because otherwise no one is going to find any of your music. It's
Yeah.
the same as always. People
Yeah.
that were highly, with the gatekeeper age, people that were highly publicized, of course, they
Sure.
sold more records in
Sure.
general because people knew who they were. Um, if no one knows who you are, you can't get any traction like that. So now, of course, everybody's putting out music, which,
True.
all right, I'm not going to say that that's a bad thing, but it does make the playing field incredibly crowded,
Yeah. Yeah.
and everybody's competing for the 1 second of everyone's time.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, sure, you can get your music out, and you can get your 2 minute, 3 minute composition on SoundCloud, that somebody's going to listen to, or maybe they'll
Hmm.
listen to 20 seconds of it.
Yeah. Sure.
I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to paint a grim picture, but this is the
No, but it's
reality.
true. Yeah. 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 It's true. It's true.
This is the
Yeah.
reality. Who's going to sit there like I did with Pharoah Sanders and Floating Point's new record? Why did I sit there and listen to that whole record and then end up loving it
Yeah.
and listen to it again? Because it was Pharoah Sanders, right? So okay, I'm
Yeah.
going to give Pharoah Sanders. It's just a human thing. It's messed up, but I'm going to give Pharoah Sanders the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
I'm going to listen to Pharoah Sanders' record because it's Pharoah Sanders,
I know what you mean. Yeah. Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
somebody who emails me, or I get some emails like, listen to my track on SoundCloud, to be honest, okay, maybe I'll go and listen
Yeah.
to it. You know, maybe I won't,
Yeah.
because I don't even, because you can't
It's too much.
listen,
Yeah.
it's too much.
Yeah.
So it's just really a weird situation. This is really a big problem, especially in the performance art world. I don't
Yeah.
know about so much for music, but in the performance art world, and in painting, sculpture,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
theater, theater
Exactly.
arts, you have to have money.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is only people with money can even get into the arts,
Yeah.
because only people with
True.
money can afford to get into
Yeah.
the arts. So what happens is only people with money, you're getting the point of view of only people who have
People. Yeah.
means.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's messed up.
Yeah. It is.
That's
Yeah. It is. It's
really a huge problem.
true. Yeah. That's why many of us teach, and do stuff, and just in order, I'm blessed and happy because I love doing it. But in this way, you pay the bills, and then luckily I can do whatever the hell I
Right.
want, if I do.
Where do you teach?
Oh, I have a music school in Maribor here in Slovenia, a guitar school for 12 years already. And,
Nice.
then you can do whatever improvised, free, or whatever project you want, because I'm not, that's what I meant. It's easy in a way. But yeah, it's fucked up, honestly. Then this second stage, how to reach people. And that's where it becomes complicated, like you
Yeah.
said.
And in one hand, it's great because you could, of course, you could take matters into your own hands.
Yeah.
You've got
But
control.
yeah. Yeah.
But
Kinda.
yeah, you're
Yeah.
in there with
Yeah.
everyone, and you're in
Yeah.
the quote slush pile.
Yeah.
How do
Yeah.
you get out of the slush pile? It's the
It's
same
tough.
problem
Yeah. Yeah.
always was. It's just a different way to sort of have to get out of it. But I find it difficult to spend 24/7 on social
Yeah.
media.
Sure.
I'm not 22 where it comes naturally to me. It's really hard. Really hard. So I too have been teaching a lot. I
Yeah.
mean, I would teach more if I, could, if I had more students or, um, you know, I, and I have to say, I'm really enjoying it tremendously. I
Yeah.
find teaching to be, um, pretty exhilarating,
Yeah. It
actually.
is. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, it's not that way for everyone, but I like doing it. We'll talk about that more after this. I'll send you an email. I want to send you a link to my improvisation workshop because it's virtual, so anybody in the world can do it,
Hmm.
and it's free
Oh wow.
because I get paid by. I live up here in Hudson, New York, and I get paid by the Hudson Opera House
Oh wow.
sponsors me to do this workshop. So it's a 4-day intensive improvisation workshop,
Oh wow.
and it's free.
Oh please, yeah,
Yeah,
let's share that also. I mean,
yeah.
that's beautiful. Yeah. But Bobby, just to I think we could talk like for hours. I don't want to take too much of your time, but I just wanted to ask you one more thing because it's you've written so much music and on so many different areas. You always go and try out new things sound wise and instrumentation wise, and you know, which is amazing. And but I wanted to ask you like this idea being a composer also like how do you get in the mindset of composing and getting ideas and not trying to repeat yourself. And I know I think you're influenced also a lot by other arts as far as I know your music and Burroughs and all the painters. But how do you get creative? I know it's a stupid question, but like as a composer to
Yeah, it's not a stupid question. It's just it's almost an impossible
yeah
question to answer. Um, uh, you know, yes, I am a big believer in living and um, experiencing other art forms and just experiencing in general. I think this is, I have to say, not to sound like my age, and I mean this in the best way, but this is another problem of the present age is that you know, I we could also talk for hours about a lot of the crazy and stupid things that I did in my life that became somehow got into my music. Um, and I really lived a life, hitchhiking across the United States,
wow
and you know, I've really done, I've done many things.
yeah that's so important
Um,
yeah yeah
um, bribing, having to bribe my way out of Moscow during the coup of Gorbachev,
man that's amazing
like things like this, where thinking I could die, be playing music in a club where a gang came in and smashed everything in the club and kept playing. We kept playing, thinking I was literally going to be killed on the
man
gig. Um, these kind of experiences, not like I was happy to have them at the time, but living a life.
yeah
I mean, after all, that's what being an artist is like, trying to
yeah
make sense of life in your particular worldview, right? Not trying to be universal, trying to be very personal, but through the personal comes the universal. So
yeah
through my
yeah
personal experience of my narrow worldview of Bobby Previte, I'm going to speak to the universality of being a human being.
yeah
But if all your experiences, if you're learning your art only through going to school,
sure
you're you're going to miss,
life yeah
yeah,
yeah
what the music is an outgrowth of, which is living and taking
funny
those
yeah
risks,
true
and that's just what it is. So I'm a great believer in that, not writing music that's not making art that references art,
Yeah, that's true.
but making art that references life.
Yeah,
And to do that, you have to live life.
yeah,
Maybe you don't have to drive a motorcycle through the desert because your friend is dying and you have to get to a hospital
no,
like
sure.
I
Yeah,
did.
yeah, okay,
You
yeah, shit, man.
know,
Yeah,
maybe you don't have to do that. Maybe you can do that in your mind. However you can do it, but you do have to do it. So I guess the answer is it's really still a mystery to me how these things happen. But I will say you're such a good questioner. Like your arc of your questions are so they make so much sense. I have to say, like, it's
oh,
like a
well,
piece of music,
it's
right?
so easy talking to you because you have so much, you I don't know. I'm like a kid in a candy store listening to you, like, okay, well,
But it's like so now comes my newest project, and it's very organic because of your question. So
I think,
I do have all this music that I've written,
yeah,
right?
incredible, yeah,
And sometimes you go back and you of course you hear it on the radio or whatever, somebody plays your music, or you're searching for something in iTunes, or it comes up on your, maybe I have it on random and one of my own
yeah,
tunes come up or whatever. And you think, man, it'd be nice to play that music again, but really I don't really want, like, first off, am I going to go back and get
yeah.
the the Claude Slate Morning Band back together or something like it, or find an accordion? Why would I
Albuquerque
do
bar band,
right? There was no
somewhere.
right. There was
Yeah,
no reason to do that now.
yeah, sure.
So I was at an art colony, and I got this idea that has now I've been doing for a year up here, a year and a half, or 2 years now, which has kind of been an amazing thing. I said to myself, I'm going to go back to every single piece of music I ever wrote, whether it was a record, a commercial,
Yeah,
a theater piece, whatever it is, every single piece of music I ever wrote, and I'm going to take one fragment from it. One fragment. It could be one bar,
yeah, phrase
one
bar
bar.
or whatever. Yeah,
It could be 12 bars. It could be 20 bars. Doesn't matter. I'm going to take one fragment. Okay. So I just extract a fragment going back all the way from 1979 or 72, the first piece I ever wrote, which is just awful, right? I was really tough to find a bar. I think I took one bar of it, right? And I took them out, right? So I took all the way until, last week,
yeah,
whatever, right? I pasted them up into a PDF. First off, I stripped all the instrumentation off it, so it's no longer written for guitar or
yeah, okay,
right.
yeah, yeah,
I took away all the dynamics. It's not loud. It's not soft. It's just raw notes, right? Okay, follow me.
yeah.
Then I put one to a page one to each page on a gigantic PDF document, 250 pages or whatever.
Man,
It's this huge PDF document, and then I put it in my iPad in Fourscore, that program.
yeah,
Okay, so what I do is I have a rotating band, and I have my iPad in front of me, and there's a screen behind me, and I project whatever's on the iPad onto the screen. And the musicians line the side, so they're facing the screen and me sort of at the same
yeah,
time. And the audience is here. The kicker is the audience also sees the projection. So everybody sees everything. And I I spontaneously select fragments, and then I do like a kind of a Butch Morrissey type
Yeah.
conduction. You know, like I'll point to you, I'll do this maybe, meaning top stave, right? I'll give you a tempo,
Yeah.
and you have to play, right? You can play in any octave,
Octave,
you
yeah,
can play with
whatever.
any
Yeah.
sound, you can do whatever you want. But I'll do canon, and sometimes we're off the page completely. Sometimes it's great to watch the audience because
Beautiful.
some of the fragments are very clear, like their actual music. You know, 4/4,
Yeah.
and you could see it all, right? And a lot of people in the audience, some are musicians, some are classical musicians, and they could sort of figure out, oh, I could see them understanding sort of what we're playing. But some of the fragments, I have one fragment from my Pan Atlantic band that's one bar, just sits in the middle of this big projection, one little bar of a low F, a
That's
quarter
it.
note, low F. That's all the fragment is. And I just cue it. I could select whoever I want, and then they just go boom,
Oh yeah.
boom, boom. And then I select people to do like wild, like maybe there's an electronic solo over it. Maybe I cut the bottom out and let the electronics, maybe I bring in a drummer to play with the electronics for a second and then take the drummer away and then bring the bass line back in. And
Yeah.
all this music happens, right? Because it's improvisation.
Yeah.
And then the people in the audience are mystified because
That's beautiful,
they're
eh?
like,
What
how
happened? Yeah.
how is all this happening? There's only one note on the screen. So it's been really, really fun. And I call the project Blueprints because
Oh
it's,
wow.
you know,
Yeah, yeah.
so this is my newest
Oh, beautiful.
love and my Blueprints project that I do up here with musicians and the musicians love it because
Yeah, sure.
it's really unpredictable. Like every night is completely different. We could select different fragments, or even the fragments we select, we play them in a completely different way. Different people play them, different tempos,
Yeah,
different everything. And
beautiful.
yeah, so
Amazing.
that's, but I realized this is a way I can play my old music, but I'm not really having to play my old music, especially in the way I played it before. Who cares?
Sure, sure. It's all
I
part
don't,
of the process. Like it's all about the path, basically. Like if we go like kind of, it's for me at least like that. I love this. I don't know how it's with you, but getting the idea of a new project. Okay, check. Selecting musicians. I love it. Research, yes. Composing. I love composing. This is my favorite. Super. Playing it, yeah, okay, amazing, great. This post-production thing, yeah, and then it's for me, okay, and that's where at least I screw up because that's when nowadays, like you said, the real work begins. But I just love the process of this, of making this
right,
product,
right.
and for me,
I
that's
understand.
that's it. Then
Right. Oh, a lot of people are like that. See, but you said something like, yeah, how do you do something? A lot of times I don't do anything different. I like, now I'm starting a big band.
really,
I've
wow,
never had a big
yeah,
band.
exactly,
And I just figure this is the perfect time to start a big band. Well, not quite yet, but eventually,
yeah,
in some months, eventually, because everybody's dying to play and everybody's dying to. What better time to have 20 people come together and play, right?
yeah,
This is, so I said, okay, Bobby, this is the time to start a big band. So the first thing
beautiful.
I'm doing, instead of writing new music for the band, well, I'm going to do some Ellington and
Oh,
because
really? Oh,
yeah,
wow.
just because I want to play in a big band. I love big band drumming, and I'm going to do. Some friends of mine have done a lot of great arrangements of like um television music and James Bond, and I'm going to use a lot of that, and just a lot of cool big band music charts. But I'm also going back to a lot of my old music and writing them as
Mm.
big band charts. and saying, wow, now I have 4 saxophones. Because back then I only had one saxophone. And what am I going to do? Now I got to make them all, and I was always making compromises, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it turned out okay, but this is kind of,
Yeah.
wow, I got all these forces now. So I'm doing both. I'm doing my blueprints, which allows me to do all my old music in any way I want, with anyone I want to. And anybody can show up any night, no rehearsal,
Yeah.
like, oh sure, you want to come and play violin? Come play. And it's great to watch them stumble, and we make mistakes. Of course they make mistakes all the time, and the audience loves that because they can see that, and I'm like, no, like try it again, and that's the performance. And then I'm going to do this big band. So
I'm looking forward.
Excited about those two things.
Yeah.
Super. But I like recycling my old music, or doing something different. It's just kind of like found material.
Yeah.
It's like but it just happens to be my material.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of James Bond, like you should do that one where you followed from Set Alarm for Month.
You like where you're from? Well, that's in Blueprints. But
James Bondish kind of thing.
James Bondish.
Yeah.
I wonder if I could do that with big band. Okay, it's interesting the tunes that I feel like I can do with big band, and the ones that I feel like no, they wouldn't be so good with big band, but maybe I'm wrong. So I'm discovering like, oh, that's not a classic big band tune, but it might be cool as big band.
To orchestrate it, yeah. Definitely. Yeah, cool, Bobby. Well, I will not take much of you. I have so many other things we could talk about, like about your connections with Marty and Jerome and Jane Ira Bloom and all these guys, but. Right. Then we can talk for 2 more hours.
That's a whole other. That's another. We'll do it again next year or something.
Yeah, exactly. Over a beer in Europe, somewhere in Italy,
That's better.
Yeah. So.
Well, it was fun.
Thank you so much for taking the time and sharing all this stuff.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Dr. Jazz.